Okay, so I think we can start and the others can join in as they come. So, good morning. There could be a significant delay in the video and audio. My connection is pretty bad. So, yesterday also there were some issues like that. And it's also that you may not clearly see any sort of text on the lecture slides through the video, so uh, it's better that you download the slides from LMS and use them in place. So this is going to be advanced networking. You have done 2 other networking courses in the previous year, and this is in many ways will be following from that. Some of the things that we'll be covering in this course will be sort of repeating and extending from what you may have covered in the previous years, and we may also go into some advanced topic as well. So the way this course is structured is it's based on the CCNA course, or the structure of this course is based on the CCNA course, which used to be called Routing and Switching Essentials. So we will be going through that sort of content areas and covering those content areas. And in many ways, I will be using slides that are from CCNA as well. So the content will be a lot closer to what you will cover or what is there in CCNA. But it will not be a one-on-one CCNA course, so that is like we will not be like fully doing a CCNA course, but we will be covering the topics, but we will also go into some other advanced topics that may be more suitable to be covered here. So that is how this course would be structured. So we would be mainly looking at routing, so configuring routers, different routing principles, static and dynamic routing. We'll look into switching, again how switches can be configured, different types of switches, level 2, level 3 switches, VLANs, and some sort of advanced sort of security type of applications in with access control lists and so on. So, and a few other topics as well. Some of these things you may have covered to in some extent in the previous courses, but we will be aiming to be covering a bit more than that as the course progresses. So before we go into the main content of the lecture today, there are a few things that I would be keen to discuss. One is about the participation. There's also like a participation in these lectures. So I can see there's about 24 students in this class now, which is pretty good. So that is one thing. But also it would be really good if there is participation from your end in terms of, say, when I'm doing the lecture, and if you have questions or if you want something explained a bit more clearly, if you could let me know that, that would be much better to do the class in a more useful manner rather than me just shouting at a camera and you are listening on your phone or a computer or whatever. So if you have any questions as we go on, put it on the chat message, or if you want to ask, unmute yourself and ask the questions, and then we can have it more sort of interactive class if possible. So the first thing that we are going to look at is about routing. So the topic that we are going to cover today is about routing concepts. So this is something that you would have covered at least to some extent previously, and you may still remember some of those from the previous semesters. So this will be sort of a refresher of what you may have already learned. So there may be not many things fully new, but we will cover a few things so that it will be useful in the coming weeks as well. So when we think about networks, one of the things that we have to understand is, especially in the sort of modern networks that we think about, these networks are not built for, or rather not used anymore for like a single purpose. Even when we think about internet as a network that is connecting people around the globe, it is not about a particular type of traffic or a particular type of use. It is rather being used for a multitude of applications. So in addition to sort of the web traffic or going to websites and so on, there's a large number of other applications like IP telephones or like video conferencing, like how we are doing now, gaming and so on. So there's larger sort of different variety of sort of applications and uses to the type of networks that we will have. And it would also apply to sort of networks in the sense of the corporate networks, smaller networks, sort of networks that are specific to businesses. Even those networks would also have sort of similar applications. Say, for example, in most offices these days, we don't have normal telephones anymore. Most of the offices would rely on having IP telephones. So those traffic would also go into the same LAN network of that organization. So there are differences in sort of the traffic that can be carried over in these networks, and that would also bring us certain requirements and sort of certain things that we would expect from such networks. So let's go through few terminologies that you may have covered in the previous course as well, just as a refresher. So the first one is about network topologies. And when we talk about network topologies, there can be two different things that we can think about when we think about network topologies. One is the physical topology, that is about how physically different things are connected, so different nodes in the network, how they are wired, how the cables are going. That physical connectivity is one thing. And then the logical topologies, how the network is configured from a networking point of view, and how the devices in the network would see the network. Say if we have used VLANs and so on to make the network look much different than how it is physically connected. So that could be seen as the logical topology. So that is something that you need to sort of be mindful of when we are talking about network topologies. That is, there can be differences in between the physical topology and the logical topology of networks. Then the other thing is about the speeds of network. So that is the speed of connectivity through a particular networking link. And again, this is something we will come to discuss even when we are thinking about routing through different networks or connecting different networks across, and thinking about what is the speed needed in a particular link to connect two different networks, thinking about how many users are there in both ends, what is the type of network traffic that needs to go through, and that in turn would inform what is the type of speed that we may want to have in such a situation. Then one of the other consideration, again thinking about sort of larger network topologies, is about the cost that may be there for setting up different networks. So that could be both the cost of the components when we think about networks, but it could also be the cost that is relevant to, say, maintenance or managing the network. So that could also be there when we are thinking about cost of networks. Then other than that, there are a few other things that would also be of interest, like security, that is how secure the network is, availability, how we, like if you want the network to be available or be usable for a particular period of time, whether it is usable when it is needed, scalability. So if we start from a organizational point of view of, say, we start an organization with 10 users, then the business increases and now the organization has 100 users, how easily we can expand the organization size to fit to that, and then reliability of network and networking components. So these are some of the sort of characteristics of networks that we may be interested in when we are thinking about networking, and we would think about these things when we are deciding, say for example, how we want to route in the network and so on. So these are relevant in that sense as well. Okay, so now let's think about connecting to a network, and from different perspectives, what may be the requirements that we may have when we think about connecting to a network. So at this point in time, almost all of us are connecting from our homes. So we may have different type of network capabilities at our homes and at our devices, and we are connecting from such an environment. Common possibility is that you are connecting from a computer or a mobile device, and you may be connected to your home network, most likely through a Wi-Fi connection, or sometimes through a wired connection, or if it is a mobile device, you may even be connected directly to the internet from your device itself through the network connectivity of the device. And in certain situations, it may be possible for us to, say, have other devices in the network, say things like a printer, for example, can be connected to the same router there. We may have, say, other devices, like say multiple devices connecting to the same router. But the main thing here would be there may not be much more complex network setting in a home network than this. So we may have a router, and most likely the same router will be the switch and the wireless access point, and all the devices would connect to that device, and that in turn would connect to the internet. So it would be sort of a single link that is connecting everything else to the internet. So that is a home network, that sort of a typical home network could be like that. But when we think about an organization or a branch office of an organization, now we may have much more type of devices and maybe even much more type of requirements to enable connectivity. So for example, like an example that we can think of a branch network could be thinking about a faculty in a university. So maybe we can think about the main university as the sort of the central office, and we can think about a faculty premises as a branch office. So in that case, we can think that in that particular branch location, we may need to have some additional networking capabilities than what we may need in a home networking environment. Because in a home networking environment, we may only have, say, few devices that are connecting there. Only like few computers and mobile devices may be all that we need. Whereas in a branch network of an organization, we may have different users connecting through their computers and mobile devices to a wireless network. So we may need to have a much more robust, much more stronger wireless access point than a home wireless access point. Say, for example, a home wireless access point may be able to support up to, say, 20 or 50 devices at a point in time, whereas in an office environment, we may want to have more than, like, say, 100 or 200 devices connecting at a point in time to a particular access point. So we may want to increase how that can be done. So for that, we may have to have a dedicated wireless access point rather than what we may have in a home sort of a situation. Then in certain office environment, we may have computers that are also connecting through IP telephones. We may have, say, file servers, we may have network printers, and so we can have a significantly different number of devices in these environments, and then all of these things may need to connect to maybe to the central office or maybe to the internet. Both of those may be needed there. So here we can see that the networking requirement becomes much more complex and much more detailed than what we may be having in a home office type of an environment. Now, if we think about expanding it even further and thinking about a central office or a head office of an organization, here we may again have the same things as we may have in a branch office, but we may also have some additional, say, servers, additional switches and routers doing much more switching and routing between networks. So all of these things may be there in such an environment. So branch office may have some type of complexities, and sort of central offices and head offices may have some different types of complexities in terms of how the network is set up, both from a physical topology point of view, but also from a logical topology point of view. And all of these premises may need to be connected through some common network. Say, for example, if we think about again the university example, like, say, for example, these days we are working from home, we have a faculty, and we have a main university premises, and all of these are located in different places, and most of the time we may be connected through the internet if we are connecting to these premises. If we have, say, we may establish a VPN connection or something like that, and we may connect these things. On the other hand, say for example, a branch office and a central office may be always connected. So these are some of the networking considerations that we may come to when we have larger networks and when we expand to build larger and larger networks from an organizational point of view. So this is sort of the place where we are starting to think about our routing and switching aspects of networking and how we may want to do those things. So that is mainly what we will be covering in this course. Okay. So now when we think about routing, the first question we can ask is, why do we do routing? So different parts of the network are connected, that connectivity is there. So then what is the need to do routing in a network? So the main place why we are doing routing is when we have different parts of the network or different networks connecting together, these different networks may not have an understanding of what is there in the other networks. Say, for example, I am working from the branch office, and in the branch office, I am at this computer, and I am normally connected to this router. On the other hand, at the central office, there is another device here that I may want to connect to. So my requirement here is to go from this computer and somehow connect to this computer. So in such an environment, I need to know where to send the information for that particular device so that it reaches. So should I send it to this router or that router, or how that goes? I may not know. So that is the main thing that we are achieving by routing. That is, when different networks are interconnecting, when these different networks are interconnecting, we are able to understand what are the other possibilities of connection and then pass on information from one network to the other. So the computer on this network, on the branch network, will be able to communicate to a computer on the office network or the central office network. Even though it may not know the exact details of how the network is there, it would know at least if the information is, say for example, shared from the branch network, that information will go to the router and the other router and then pass on to the organizational network. So that is the main thing that we achieve by doing routing. Then when we think about routers can be essentially seen as computers. So one of the things that you can actually do is you can build a router using a computer. Like say for example, you can have a somewhat of a capable computer, and then you can install some open source software and make it a router, and then you can use it as a router. An example could be a software called pfSense, and that would make that can be installed on a computer to make it a router, as long as there are certain hardware capabilities are there. So a router is basically a computer that is going to do certain processing to understand where the network traffic needs to go, and then it will process those network traffic accordingly. So it is basically, it needs to have a processor a central processing unit that can do that. It needs to have an operating system, so it may not use a standard desktop operating system, even though that is possible. But it can also use some specialized operating system, like for example in the case of Cisco routers, it may be the iOS or Internet Network Operating System. Then it may have other standard sort of computing peripherals like memories and so on. So, but in addition to what may be there from a sort of a standard computer point of view, it may also have some specialized components that are there from a hardware point of view. So from a networking hardware point of view, a router may have some additional component that may not be present in a standard computer that we may come to use. So that is the main difference. But other than that, conceptually, a router is basically a computer that has some additional networking capabilities. The other way that we can look at computers or routers is, in addition to looking at them as computers, is about how they are interconnecting different networks. So what we have here is, we can say in the example that we were previously looking at, we had a home network, we had a branch network, and then we had a office network, a central office network. Now, all of these different networks need to communicate with each other, and a router is going to enable connectivity between all these devices. So a computer in the home network is able to communicate to the central office, a computer in the branch network to the central office, or central office to the branch office. All these are possible because at each of these networks there are routers that are trying to understand how to connect to the other networks, maybe through local area networks, maybe through wide area networks, but they are still able to figure out how to reach to a particular other network, and then they are being routed like that. And when we think about this, it's not just the routers that we have placed within this network. So, each of these premises may have their own routers that are there, but in addition to that, we may also come to use or rely on routers that exist elsewhere. Say for example, if we are connecting through the internet, we may be routed through routers that are there from the internet service providers. So for example, if we think about our example now, how we are connected now, so what may be happening is, say I am connected from my home network to my internet service provider, in this case it's Dialog, and from there the network connectivity may go to another internet service provider to which this particular server or service is connected to. So that may be SLT or someone else. From there it may again hop on to another service provider to which you may be connected to. So maybe that may be someone else. So from different internet service providers it may have to be routed. So at each of those places also there needs to be a router to route across the network. So in addition to the routers that we have at both ends of the connection, we may also use the routers that are there in between the path through the internet service providers. And one of the other things the routers may do is also about when we have multiple possibilities of connecting to a network. Say for example, if there is only one connectivity possibility, say for example, I am connected from my home to the internet through a single connection. I only have a home broadband connection through LTE. So that is the only connection that I have at home. So that is how I am going to be connected to the internet. But for example, in an organizational environment, it may be possible that they have multiple possible parallel connections connecting two different networks. One may be through a wireless link and the other one may be through a wired link. And sometimes the wireless link may be better, sometimes the wired link may be better, depending on what is it that we are expecting to use it. So depending on those cases, the router may be able to make a decision in terms of what is the best path to send a packet to the other network. So whatever the packets that we have, say from this network, and if it needs to go to that network, it may make a decision and decide how I am going to send from this to that and what is the mode of transfer that it is going to use, and that the router can use depending on the information that it has about the different links and different paths that it has about the network. When we think about routers, one of the main things that they do is about connecting different networks and somehow forwarding traffic from one network to the other. And to do that, the main thing that they do, the main activity that they take is forwarding packets. So taking a packet from one network and sending it across to the other network. So it is about, the router will receive a packet, it has to make some decisions as to where to send that, and then it will onward send that packet to that particular network. So that is essentially the main thing a router would do. So to do that, routers can take few different approaches, and those approaches are what we call as packet forwarding mechanisms. So the first way to do that is what is called a process switching. So in process switching, basically what the router does is, so it would have different packets coming in from its incoming interface, and from there those packets will be taken to its processing point. So we said router is a computer that is going to do some processing. So all the packets will be taken to that processing point, and then they will be decided. The router will make a decision as to where to send those things, and it will send those things out to the appropriate networks. So that is process switching. So in process switching, router receives packets, it takes everything, makes routing decision based on understanding where this packet needs to go. For each packet, it will do that analysis and find out where to send that packet, and then it will forward that. But this is an older approach, and it is also fairly slow approach because it is doing this comparison and decision making for each of the packets that are coming and going out. So it is process switching is a simpler approach because it is doing it like that, but it is slower and not much used in routers or present routers anymore. So the second approach for packet forwarding is what we call as fast switching. In process switching, what we do is we take every packet and process that and send it out. Whereas in fast forwarding, what we are doing is we would receive the packets in a similar manner. So the packets are coming in a similar manner through the incoming interface. But after that, what we do is initially the packet will be taken to the control plane where it is going to be processed. But the CPU will now search if there's a cache for fast switching. So that is, if the CPU makes a decision previously for a packet for a destination, it may have come to a destination calculation or computation in terms of where to send that packet to. So at that point, it will save that information in what is called a fast switching cache, and then when a next packet comes, it will go and check that fast switching cache, and if that information is there, it will quickly take that information and forward that packet. If it is not there in the fast switching cache, it may go to again do a process switching, but at that point it will now save that information, so newer packets in the future can use that information. So when a packet comes for the first time, it will be process switched, but any other subsequent packets will be fast switched based on the previously calculated information. So that is basically the main difference between process switching and fast switching. Here we use a fast switching cache that can be used for quicker lookup and forwarding of packets. Then the third approach that we can look at is an approach that is specific to Cisco devices. It is called Cisco Express Forwarding. It is a variant from the fast switching, so it is similar to fast switching utilizing caches, but it also has a different way of building that cache. In fast switching, the cache was built based on the incoming packets. So when a new packet comes in, if that is not previously understood, it will do process switching and now calculate that information, and in future it will be used for any future traffic lookups. But the first lookup will have to be process switched. Whereas in Cisco Express Forwarding, that cache will be built based on if anything changes in the network. Say for example, if the network changes and now there's a new router, new network is connected, this particular router will now take that information and build a new forwarding table, new forwarding cache based on that information. So whatever the new packet comes after that will already be there finding a match in the cache. So it will much more reduce the number of first cache lookups compared to just fast switching. So this is just a variation from fast switching, but one specific to Cisco devices. So once we know how we are forwarding traffic, so now the router is receiving packets and it is forwarding those packets. So we are using different packet forwarding mechanisms, but we are still forwarding packets. So we are receiving packets and we are forwarding them onwards. But one of the things to understand is, even though we are forwarding packets, where are we forwarding this to? So when we need to send anything across a network, we need an IP address, a subnet mask, but we also normally use what is called a default gateway. And what is that default gateway? So it is something that you may come across when you are setting up networks. This default gateway is basically a way of identifying to where the network traffic need to reach for it to come to that particular device. Say for example, if this is the device that we are talking about, so if this device, this PC1 is the device that we are talking about, the way this PC1 can be reached from an outside network is a PC1 is connected to this switch, so information needs to come to that switch. That switch is connected to this router, so that information or the packet needs to come to that router. So anything that comes to this router, then this router will know where to send that to, because this device is connected to that router. Same thing for this device as well. that is also connected to the same router. So in this case, these devices, any traffic to these devices, as long as they come to this particular router, router 1, that router 1 can send that information to that device. So that is basically what we identify as the default gateway. For each device, what is the router or what is the device a packet needs to come to for it to reach to that end device. So that device we would call as the default gateway. So any traffic that is coming from the outside network, it has to somehow reach from these different routers and reach this one so that they can be forwarded onto the relevant devices. Then when we think about routing, we need to understand how the network is configured, how different things are laid out across the network. And it would be required for us to document those things in a understandable manner so that we understand how everything is laid out in the network, so we can make decisions or we can configure things in terms of how we want to do routing and other things. To do that, we use few different approaches. One is a topology diagram. So a topology diagram is basically a way for us to put everything that is in the network into a diagram. That is basically the topology diagram. Or we may use what is called a addressing table. It is basically a way of listing out the various properties of different nodes in the network. So what we may do is, say for example, we have a router, we have PCs, and for each of those we may have, say, different interfaces, and each of those interfaces may have different IP addresses and subnet masks, and for PCs we may configure default gateways. So all these configurations, we would want to put them in some common place so they can be used by anyone who needs to understand that particular network. So we may use these different approaches to document networks, and even when we are discussing various other concepts in this course, we will always come back to either one of these approaches to document what is there in that network. Say when we are configuring these different routers and switches, we may want to document somewhere what is the IP address that we have configured for this particular interface or this particular interface. So all this information we will document in one of these options. So the next thing is about configuring hosts. So when we have routers and switches and so on, at the end of those we are going to have different host devices that are going to connect. So a typical host device could be a computer that we are connecting to a network. So when we are connecting a computer to this network, that host to that network, we want to configure, we would be required to configure those essential configuration details in that device. So we may want to configure the IP address, the subnet mask, and the default gateway for that particular device in that computer. And there are two ways that we can do that. We can either go and manually configure them using what is called static configuration. So we are going in for each device and we are manually giving that information. So that is one option. The other option is using what is called DHCP servers, which would give us the information about those things for a particular network. So like IP address assignments, subnet masks, and default gateways will be given by a protocol message from a DHCP server, and we can use that to automatically configure the device. So we will be looking at DHCP servers at a later stage as well in a bit more detail in terms of how those can be configured in our routers and so on. But that is something that we will do as part of routing as well, because for routing to happen, these host devices need to have this information, and that information can either be given manually or they can be given automatically or dynamically from the router itself. And one of the other things again that we may come across in sort of physical routers, that when we are looking at a physical router, is we may have certain indicator lights that are common across most routers. We may have green LEDs and amber LEDs or orange LEDs indicating what is happening in terms of that particular link. So that is something that we may have. So even in sort of normal home sort of router devices, some of them will have that type of indicator LEDs to indicate what is happening with that particular networking port, that networking connectivity link that is there. And again, one of the other things that we will go into much more detail in the coming weeks is about how we can access and configure routers. So that is how we can connect to routers, whether we do secure shell connections, whether we do through web connectivity, or whether we are connecting directly through a console connection. So these are few different options that can be possible. But regardless of all these connectivity possibilities, at the end of the day, how we are configuring these devices will still be the same. So even if we are connected through SSH or HTTP or direct cable connection through like Telnet or something, we would still be configuring using the same commands in a similar manner, because the underlying operating system of those routers are going to be the same. So whatever that we would cover in the coming weeks about configuring would still be the same regardless of how we are connected to a particular router. Then the other thing that we will be covering in much more detail is about switching. So routing is one part of the course. The other part is about switching and how those things impact our network configuration. And one of the things that we can have is these switches are also devices that can be configured. So even though in a normal understanding, the end PCs are the ones that we would be normally configuring. So these end PCs are the ones we are normally configuring when we are thinking about a network. But in a managed switch, in a switch that can be configured to do various things like VLANs and so on, we may want to connect to that switch also directly. So we may want to go to that switch also directly and do configuration. For that purpose, we may want to configure a particular IP addresses for that switch, so that switch can be directly connected and we can make configuration of that switch. These IP addresses or these connectivities may not be used for sort of standard routing purposes that we may have in networks. It may mainly be used by sort of network administrators for sort of a configuration purpose. It is not about sort of network connectivity from a host point of view. It is more about configuring VLANs and so on from a network configuration point of view. So that is also something that we will be discussing in much more detail when we are discussing switches. And when we think about routers that are connecting multiple across routers, connectivity across multiple routers, we can also think of them as doing some level of switching there. goes like, when it is switching, it is receiving a packet and sending across somewhere else is basically switching. And routers will also do that to some extent when they are connecting across devices. So even though switches will sort of dedicatedly do switching as their main function, routers will also, we can see them as doing some level of switching when they are passing on packets across the network. So that is also something that we can think about in terms of how network with multiple layers works. Say for example, we are going from, we would like encapsulate across multiple layers, and then how we can go to different layers to understand different aspects of the network. So these are again things that we will be covering in the coming weeks as well. So then when routers are receiving information and forwarding information, they have to make some decisions in terms of when they are doing that packet switching. So either they are doing different packet forwarding mechanisms, or they are doing processing. They still need to make a decision as to what to do when a packet is received. So it has to first, one of the first possibilities is the destination IP address is directly connected to the same router. It is in the same network as the same router. So if that is the case, the router can directly forward that packet. The destination packet is in a remote network. It is in a remote network, but the router knows about that network. The router already has some connectivity to that network. It knows how to send something to that network, how to forward something to that network. Then router will forward the packet like that. Sometimes we may not have any understanding of a particular network. So we may not have any particular routing established for a network. In that case, we may forward that across to what is called a last gateway of resort. Say for example, if we think about home network, in your home network router, it will know about all the devices that you have. So it will know about your mobile device, your laptop, your computer. So that router knows about that. But if it needs to forward something to say, for my computer, it will not, your computer will not know about my computer's network. But it will know, at least as long as it sends it out to the ISP, to the ISP's router, then the ISP router may figure out how to send that forward. So that ISP router may be considered as the last resort gateway of last resort. So if this home router doesn't know where to send that packet to, it will forward it to the ISP. Then ISP will figure out, okay, where to send to the next ISP, or from the same ISP, the ISP will make those decisions. So these are the key routing decisions a router will make. That is, if it is a directly connected network, it will directly forward. If it is a remote network, it will forward up to the appropriate interface. If it is no routing determined, it will forward it to the gateway of last resort. Then to make that decision, it will use what is called the routing table. So routing tables is basically a list of entries of different networks and how to forward to those networks. So the router will use that information, store that information there in the router, and then it will make decisions in terms of how to do that. Say if it is directly connected, another network is directly connected, it will know that. If it is a remote network, it may still learn about that network through routing protocols, and it will build a list of entries. Say, okay, if it is that network, I send it this way. If it is that network, I send it this way. So it is figuring out the different networks there, and it will forward traffic accordingly. So that is basically the function of routing tables. And with building routing tables, we can use two different approaches. One is called static routes. So that is, the routing table is manually configured. So the administrator will have to come and manually configure the routing table to say these are the different networks that are there, and this is how reach to those networks through these interfaces. So that is basically static routing. On the other hand, we will have dynamic routing, where the router is using certain protocols to learn about what is there elsewhere in the network automatically. So it is automatically building these routing tables. So both this static routing and dynamic routing are the topics that we will be covering in the upcoming lectures in much more detail. There we will talk about different routing protocols, and we will discuss in much more detail about both static and dynamic routing. So that brings us to the end of today's main content that we need to cover. But there are a few more things to discuss in terms of what we are doing about grading and so on in this course. Even in normal circumstances, even in the previous year, this was we had a significant emphasis on weekly submissions of take-home practices of network configurations and so on, and also we had some quizzes. So we would do the same thing, and we would also have some assignments and so on depending on how we go, and all these may change slightly depending on how the teaching mode happens and so on, but that is a basic plan that we have for now. And in terms of practical sessions, what you would have is, each week you will be given a set of packet tracer activities that you will have to do in packet tracer, in configuring devices, configuring routers, using iOS commands, issuing command lines, to configuring interfaces and so on. So those will be there. Each week I'll be sharing whatever the relevant packet trace activities. There may be about 3 or 4 activities each week, but you will be asked to only submit one of those activities, and for each of the submissions you will get, say, 5 marks. So if we do, say, about 8 submissions, you will get 40 marks. The only expectation is you are not submitting the same file, but given the way packet tracer works these days, that will not be possible. But it will be made easy, because all these packet trace activities will have an associated video explaining how to do that particular packet trace activity. So you just need to look at that video and do the configuration in that packet tracer and upload that file in a weekly manner. I have already uploaded, in case you want to download packet tracer, I have uploaded offline setups onto LMS, so you can download without sort of data charges and so on. And I will also upload the assignments and so on. And normally you will have about a week or maybe sometimes 2 weeks to finish and submit that. Make sure you submit on time so that you can easily get 40 marks for the course. So that just doing these, you can basically pass the course. So then anything else would be just extra. So I have already added all of you to the LMS, and you can always contact me if you have any doubts and feedbacks. And in addition to the standard lectures, we can also have maybe additional discussions. If you want to have, just let me know and we can organize something. And as always, like, if you have doubts and questions, it's better for you all to ask those things early and ask those things whenever those things are happening. So rather than waiting till the end or like much later, if you have a doubt, ask that immediately, so that we can sort of coordinate that and have some additional sessions regarding that. So other than that, that's all for this. So thank you. See you next week.